Thanks for tuning into this episode of Entrepreneurial Impact with Joe Martin and Dave Donaldson. And we've got the pleasure of having David Brosseau as our guest on this week's episode. So just to hype up Dave, Dave's a former hockey player. I don't even know. I'm not big on hockey, so I don't even want to jack up what your titles were and like what you played. But I understood it was like the minor league feeder team into the Rangers. And I'm totally butchering this because I see Dave laughing his ass off because I have no skate skills whatsoever. But Dave is the regional director for the Greater Heartland for Keller Williams. He's the operating principal for a market center brokerage in St. Louis in the greater area of that with over 800 agents. And I will tell you the one thing that I'm really excited about this conversation with is that there's very few and far between people in your life that you are like, I am so glad this person's in my life because of the gifts that he has in leadership and the insights and perspective that he shares. Because I think great friends and great colleagues, they're there when you're in your downtimes, but they're also willing to kick you in the ass when you're not having the right perspective or vision. And I know that anytime I need a kick in the ass, Dave is there for me. So in a friendly way, right? Like we all need that person. I got to know.
For sure.
Well, Dave, like I'd love to have you just kind of go through like what's been your journey from coming to Canada, US and hockey and business. And let's start there because I think your journey is really impactful for a lot of entrepreneurs that tune in to this podcast weekly.
Sure. Thank you. You said ass a couple of times, so now I get an understanding of what can be said and not. So thank you for that too. I grew up in Canada, and as most Canadians do, I grew up playing hockey and enjoyed it, and got drafted, played junior hockey in Canada, then got drafted in the NHL by the New York Rangers, and then spent about 8-9 years playing, if you think of baseball, like AAA or AA hockey around the minor league.
See, I wasn't far off. I wasn't that bad in butchering that hype on hockey.
Right. No, it's fine. It's fine. It was, I've learned, I didn't understand during my time playing how much I've learned and how much this would translate to my business world. And I completely misunderstood that at the time. And then when I got into business, I got into real estate in 2005 as an agent, actually in Richmond, Virginia. And in 2008, moved to St. Louis, Missouri. My wife at the time, through a merger for her world, she was in the financial world, and Wachovia Securities acquired that business here, and we moved here. And I joined Keller Williams in August of 2008. I think September is my anniversary date. And then in October, the financial world collapsed of 2008. And the timing couldn't have been any more perfect to start over.
Humor, everybody. Dave's got some great deadpan if you get to know him. But there's some humor.
Yeah. So 2008, I joined a market center here in St. Louis. And really, it's funny. I didn't know Keller Williams. They weren't present in Richmond at the time. I was not affiliated with them moving over. And I met a couple that was affiliated with Brian Buffini. It's like a coaching company. And I was in that coaching company as well. And kind of looked, they had a national network if you want to do referrals and all that. And found them. It was a husband and wife team that they're still actually with the office, and interviewed with them and joined their team in the market center by default. And that's how I got to Keller Williams.
Quick,
so
concise.
No one was chasing me. It wasn't exciting, I guess.
Well, so how did you go from giving people, I think, the faith that like when they bet on themselves, they can build whatever they like bet on themselves with, right? And I think sometimes people are like, oh, that's too big. How could I ever do that? I got all this self-doubt. So you go from living in Virginia with the minor leagues and hockey to I'm going to go to St. Louis and I'm getting into real estate at the bottom of a market. And you went from being a real estate agent as a agent on a team to now regional director of everything inside of that territory, and also being the owner operator of probably the largest brokerage in Greater St. Louis. Like, so, I mean, you're humble, which I really appreciate too, but that's a pretty, when you talk about inspiration for people, like that's a trajectory and growth path that people can relate to, and like, hey, you just put the work in. So like, how did you go from buyer agent to where you are today?
Yeah. It's funny. It's really simple, actually. You know, a lot of places, but Keller Williams certainly is one where they spend a lot of time on defining your why. Why do you want to pursue this, or why this is your goal? And there's a lot of emphasis on it. And I'm certainly not against this thought process. But from an athlete perspective, what you learn is you focus more on how, because typically why in the sports world anyway, implies past performance. Like, why did we lose? Why did we do this? What happened? And then you sit in front of in a video room and you review tapes and you identify how you can change things. And I think unconsciously throughout that journey, what I learned is you have to become part of the solutions if you want to be part of the team. So when in 2010, fall of 2009, my operating partner at the time approached me to see if I'd be interested in becoming a team leader. And honestly, I wasn't that involved in the office. Our office wasn't doing that good enough that I didn't really know what my team leader was doing at the time. So, but I was like, sure, this sounds great. What do you need?
Talk about blind faith.
Servant leader, if I
what do you need?
One. Sure, I'll help.
So, well, I knew the gist of it, but I certainly wasn't like I had gone to Mega Camp only once. I hadn't been to really any regional events or anything like that. Like I didn't have a full understanding of the scope of really who we were as a company, and but I was intrigued about being a team leader. And when I left sports, the reason why I did was more because if it would have been up to me, I would have stayed in sports. But I left because I didn't want, like, if you start back in the minors in operations or coaching or whatever, you're there 2, 3, 4 years, and then hopefully you get promoted and you end up traveling quite a bit. And I didn't want to do this. When I started in real estate, it's really, my son was probably 6 months old, and that was a big part of the reason why I got out of sports. So I didn't want to do that. So that's how part of what real estate, but the idea of becoming a team leader, and what happened in the fall of 2009, I went to Recruit Select and took the Recruit Select class and spent 2 days learning about behaviors and how to build a team and how to match people's personality to the right role and maximize performance and all this stuff. And I know this will be a kind of a shock to you, but I'd never really entertained or much like conversation around curtains and carpet colors. So when I got to a point where I could have a conversation about how to actually build a team and identifying talent through behavior and matching behavior to roles, I'm like, this is exciting. And so March of 2010 is kind of when I got into the role and started as a team leader. And then for anybody that thinks opportunity should look a certain way, mine was $35,000 with no bonus, mainly because we had no profit. And I was just excited because I squeezed in $100 from my cell phone. And that's kind of how we started.
So if anyone wants to figure out how to provide incentives, pay for their cell phone bill. Got it.
I got a cell phone bill covered. I thought, I was like, this is awesome. Like, off we went.
When I look at that, though, right, and it's a lot of successful business people and entrepreneurs that come from a diverse myriad of backgrounds. But your background is dynamically different, having been an athlete. A lot of us were skilled and good at different things that we did, right? Joe played football, so he says, at college. I don't know, right? But playing at the levels that you got to, juniors, you're right, drafted, right? There's a different level of drive and sacrifice to get there above and beyond skill. Right. And that's kind of like, I want people to understand that you can get anywhere you want, and you can call that $5,000 sacrificing and setting a benchmark for yourself. But you had a belief system because you had done things before. So doing things, there's the drive. Let's talk about the drive that you have found to get you to certain places.
Well, I think it's when I start realizing how, and this is an observation, not a judgment, but this is when I realize how different the world was going into business compared to where I came from in hockey. As an athlete, being corrected on a daily basis is pretty standard, multiple times a day. Being taught on a daily basis is pretty standard, and it's pretty normal. There's no HR department, there's no 90-day plan to wake the hell up. Like, it's just, you either do it today or you may not be here tomorrow.
There wouldn't be any coaches around.
Right. So when you put all that together and then you get into what I call the real world, like for me, being challenged or being told how to do things and all this stuff was normal. Like, I wasn't like, that didn't bother me. Like, in fact, I would say I thrive in it. I get lost if I don't have a map. I don't like embracing a playbook. I never felt it was my job to question the playbook. If a coach gave me a playbook, I trusted that they gave me the best playbook available. And then when I got in business and people say, hey, here's our playbook, then I just went and I think a lot of times people are busy questioning things. And not that I'm a yes man. Joe can tell you that. But I think there's a fine line between questioning things just to questioning them versus having faith in who and trust in who you're affiliating yourself with, that, hey, this is designed to help you win. If you believe that, then it becomes a matter of execution, right? So that, but to your point, Dave, I think execution does require some to be hard-headed and to be determined and because it's not what we do is not easy. So unless you find a way to have some sort of mental toughness or commitment to it, it won't last. That's for sure.
There's nothing easy in leadership. Right?
No. Well, I haven't found it yet.
there are components that are enjoyable. There are components that can come naturally, but those are all things that are worked at. And at some degree, you're going to have challenges and struggles. But it's what do you do to overcome, right? Who is your coach, right, to help you get there? And recognize, because you said it yourself, you can't get there alone.
No, there's no way. And I also think that I don't know, like I went for a while without a destination in mind, just kind of trusting the journey and trusting the process that it would land me in a safe place. But I think a lot of times people will embrace opportunity, and the first question, or they think they embrace opportunity, and the first question is like, well, what's at the end of this? Well, I'm like, I don't know. We haven't started yet. Like, we're trying to build this.
I don't know to Joe. That gets him upset.
It's a trigger.
It's
a trigger.
No taking. But do you see what I'm saying? Like, sometimes people want to know the end before we go through it, and I don't always know the answer to that.
Doesn't that go back to? And we'll dive into why I can't stand the term I don't know, because that's a whole different rabbit hole. But I think what's interesting about what you're talking about is that people are too tied up in the end result as rather than like loving the process. Like, if you take sports, like take yours for hockey, if you don't generally enjoy being on the ice and finding your skills better, like winning a championship, you're not going to have the grit to get through it because you don't generally love the presence of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And I think that has to do a lot with love the process, because if you love the process, that process will get you the end goal. And I think a lot of people forget that you actually have to go through activities, right? I think that's what a lot of successful people fine-tune their process and become experts at that, and then you see the results from that.
And I think you earned your next opportunity in the journey, not when you get to the results. And I think a lot of people mix that up by saying, well, I did this, therefore I'm like, okay, but we're not done. Like, this is like the end of the first quarter, or this is the end of the first period. Like, I think that's great. We're doing good. Like, we've got great momentum, but that we're not done. So I can't speak to what chapter 2 is. Like, we need to nail this one first. And I think there's a lot that gets earned unconsciously in the journey that create a certain cadence to your journey after that.
So for all those that are tuned in, and if you're watching on YouTube or any of the video cut-ups, there's a card that Dave gave me in an airport in my wallet. So when we talked about why I've prepped this up for leadership, is this card stays in my little money clip wallet thing with my credit cards. And what I thought was interesting, the back side of it goes into entrepreneurship and some leadership stuff. Oh, look, Dave's got it too.
I feel left out now.
I'll get you one. Dave gave me a couple ones, so I'll give you one. But like what I thought was interesting was I'll let Dave Brosseau talk about like leadership from this card, but like I'll start it with this. It's 10 things that require zero talent: being on time, work ethic, effort, body language, energy, attitude, passion, being coachable, doing extra, and being prepared. So this was the card that Dave gave to me at an airport as we were having some beers at the bar before we got on our flights, and we're talking about leadership, and this is what I got from him. He didn't say anything else. He just handed it and said, keep this in your wallet.
I found this probably 10 years ago. Do you have the other side too? Do you
I'm
have the
going to
new
leave that
version?
for you to talk about. Yeah, I've got the other side too.
Okay.
I'll let you talk on that one.
So the 10 things for like that require zero talent. I got this probably. I found this probably 10 or 12 years ago. I saw it somewhere, and I got really excited because it confirmed I didn't have much talent, but it confirmed I could do all these things. I was like, I can be on time. I work hard. I'm not afraid of putting time and effort into it. Body language, I can figure this out. Energy, I can bring it. Attitude is good. Passion, being coachable, probably to a fault. Doing extra, again, not a problem. And being prepared, I love it. So I'm like, if this is all it takes, I can do this every single day. And I cannot tell you how many times on planes or just in, you're in a slump or something. I'm like, all right. And I would that's why I put it in my wallet. I reach in my wallet. I would go back and I would like, all right, like where I'm at, what's missing right now? What am I frustrated with? Or where's my energy? And oftentimes I'll tell you is the last one, being prepared. I get ahead of myself. And then I feel like I'm not as prepared as I should be. And then that triggers me. I feel it gets me anxious, nervous, all the above. And then I'm like, all right, I got to go back to the drawing board and make sure I got my bearings straight. And so I've been carrying this for a long time. And then the other side just came about last year. And I think it was late last year. I saw that one and then I decided to get it on the same because I didn't want to carry two. The other side says, What is it that you want more than anything else in this life that you have? Do you want more time, freedom, love, health, joy, connection, belonging, purpose, security, certainty, or peace? Are you willing to be burned out, strapped, disliked, broken, miserable, isolated, lonely, lost, afraid, unsecure, conflicted? As an entrepreneur and a business owner, I get asked if enduring these things are worth it. And the answer is easy. It's impossible to know one without the other. And if you were to give me that one 10 years ago, I don't know if it would have resonated with me. But 10 years later, this shit's pretty accurate, unfortunately.
I love that. That's really deep. I love it. Like just listening. Yeah. And the cool thing is like just listening to you present it, I can feel that you've felt it and been, right?
I do.
That's kind of what you're not just reading words on a card, right?
Yeah, I kept it because I relate to it, and I don't say this. I'm not special, and I'm not saying this that people should. You should be aware of what you're sacrificing, and that's just part of it. But I think the challenge that I see is that oftentimes people want this, and they misunderstand the cost of getting it. Or they underestimate the cost of getting it. And I think 9 times out of 10, not getting it is not a reflection on their ability or talent or whatever. I think it's a matter of willingness and understanding if you're comfortable with the cost.
And that also kind of goes back to my original question of drive and sacrifice. Like, what are you willing to give up and do to get to achieve your goals? Because it's hard to do one without the other.
I haven't figured it out yet. I mean, like it is hard.
Now, when I look at that, and again, I think you come from a unique perspective on a lot of these things because you understand it, but you don't get there alone either, right? There are things that you
No.
have that you inherently have, and we touched on skill, and then you build on those skills through drive and sacrifice. But it's still to have an idea of where I want to go. And you talked about, in the beginning, you had no destination in mind, but now you started to formulate what that looks like as you've achieved success. But
Yeah.
all along the way, you've had coaches and trainers, right? Teammates, right? Some have come and gone. Some have gone in different directions. But you've been able to kind of
Yeah.
harness that to know what you're looking for. And I think that kind of somewhere where we kind of wanted to go a little bit with this was recognizing, how do I build something and find the right people? What does that look for? What are you looking for when you look for in talent? And I think the card is a starting point, right?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. So early, probably within my first 6 months of being a team leader, I didn't fully understand or recognize the amount of counseling that came with it, that was required, and it wasn't necessarily my strength at the time. And I remember having somewhat of a venting session with my father and telling him about all the counseling session I was dealing with. And my dad, in a very matter of fact, very simple thing, he goes, all right, let me ask you this. He said, if you were coaching this team as a hockey team, what would be the decision? Like, what would you have to do? And I kind of beat around the bush, and I'm kind of giving some PC answer and all this stuff. And he goes, Dave, that's bullshit. Like, to me, it sounds like you have a really bad team, so you need to go get better players. Right? And he goes, isn't that what you would do if you're coaching like a sports team? And I said, yeah. I said, and this like really clicked with me, and because that this is my language, if you will, like that resonated with me, because doesn't mean that better players don't complain or need support or whatnot, but they'll be more solution driven, right? So we had a cultural issue, and I'll tell you, to this point, there's really three intangible that I look for people. And it's funny because I didn't go to college, but I call it a PhD. So I look for people that have passion, that are hungry, and that are determined. And I believe if your PhD fits within my range of PhDs, I guess, that I'm looking for, depending on the role, I can coach you the rest. I can teach you the rest that you need. But if you don't have that, I'm not a good cheerleader. Like, it's going to get awkward within 6 months, and you're not going to like it. I won't like it. But if you're passionate and hungry about where we're going and what we're trying to accomplish, I think it'll be pretty cool. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Your dad's giving you some pretty sound advice.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. He's pretty awesome. More than I care for at times.
But he was able to see.
He's very gifted. I'll say this. He's always been very gifted about simplifying things for me. Like, he said, you're overthinking this. And then he was like, I'm like, yeah, you're right.
And that's kind of like I was looking at. Like, he really just cut, like, you were painting a picture of diplomacy, right, around what's happening. And he's
right.
like, nah. You cut through that. You got to get better players. You got to draft a better team. And
it's funny because when I said that to my OP at the time, and she said to me, and Joe will probably remember this more than us, but I got hired as a team leader at the time that the St. Louis Rams, I think, went 2-14, and the Indianapolis Colts went 15-1 or something like that. And this is how clueless I was about the business world. In my interview with her, she said, "What do you think? What do you think should happen, or what do you think you should do with this role, or something like this?" was the question. And I said, well, whether it's me or somebody else, here's how I look at it. We're kind of the Rams right now, and we need to figure out a way to become the Colts. and looking back, and she appreciated it and laughed about it. But I'm thinking, like, how rude of me to say this to the person that actually owned the business, right? But I mean, she's been an awesome lady to me, and obviously it worked out. But
being able to have that insight and that candor to be that director, like, there's placating an owner. Which word does that really get you? You're the Redskins,
yeah.
Or you, right? Sorry. Or your director saying, this is what it's going to take to get the job done, right? And if she didn't appreciate your honesty and integrity on what you were saying, then you knew you weren't the right person for that role.
Right. And it wasn't meant to be disrespectful or anything, but I think at the end of the day, performance matters, and it pretty much drives everything. I mean, there's not a whole lot to talk or discuss until performance is addressed.
Well, and I had to say Redskins there because I couldn't throw my own Philadelphia Flyers under the bus because they've had a little bit better this year. But I have my ownership issues with them that goes on better more than a decade. But that's okay.
Well, I think what you're bringing up, Dave, is leaders define reality no matter how great or how harsh the situation is. And once you define reality, you can have a path forward. And I think that's what you're actually seeing, is that a lot of times in our society, people don't want to hear the reality, and by not hearing the reality, they can't actually fix the situation that they're in.
I think we hide behind the noise that is around all of us.
So here's just like, as I wanted to ask this final question, because we've talked a lot about leadership, and usually that topic derives like the rainmaker or the person that's in charge, right? But I think there's a lot of leadership that can be exuded by the team members from either managing up or being the camaraderie and that type of thing. So when you talk about leadership for somebody that's maybe a team member, what are some of the attributes that you would look at as a team member to make the team as a whole better?
I think leadership of a teammate is represented I think leadership is a collective responsibility. I think it's everyone's responsibility to be a leader in some capacity, regardless of the role or the seat they have at the table. And I think one of the ways, if I look in business, then I think you need to care about my goals as much as I care about yours, or real close to it. Because otherwise, it's easy to get out of alignment and not running in the same direction together. And I think when you can establish a cultural environment that, if I'm on a real estate team or I'm at a store, I didn't care what it is. But if I don't care about the success of the team as much as the team cares about mine, I think there's a leadership disconnect there that will challenge any kind of movement or prohibit any kind of movement forward.
Makes a ton of sense. I think it's just important for people to hear that, like, you can lead from any position on a team. And a lot of times you hear like, well, that's not my role, it's not my responsibility or whatever. But I think it goes back to, like, in team dynamics, like, everyone plays their own role, right? Even if it's like your job is to sweep the ice, or your job is to make sure that, you know, these people show up on time, or whatever the thing may be, is I think that everybody needs to own a certain level of the process, but also realize that their individual contributions lead up to the overall success. And I think a lot of times people that are not in the direct leadership role, where call it the weight of the world is on your shoulders. Because, like, going back to the description of the card, is that, like, sometimes you feel lonely and afraid and isolated. Not everybody in a leadership position has the sole reins of it, but it still means that you have ownership and accountability inside the overall goal for the organization. And how do you show up as a leader in that position?
Well, and if you don't feel the things that you just described, someone is doing a really good job at protecting you from it, and therefore you should step up that much more.
100%.
Yeah, I really appreciate this topic, this conversation, and I'm sitting here. I've got all these hockey analogies kind of spinning through my head. I think that there's a business book in here somewhere. I really do, because any athlete has a background and a dynamic that sets them apart. But by far, the hockey world is so different until you've kind of come up through it. And I haven't played, but I've coached and watched my son come up through it. But there's just something different about those people, right? And it kind of really just kind of resonating with me. But I wanted to ask you this because you kind of brought up the counseling sessions that you kind of found yourself in. And I always like to have a little fun as we wrap these things up. And I'm going to give you a choice here. Okay? Getting socked in the jaw by Joey Cursor, or having one of those TL counseling sessions with somebody that just walked into your office to complain about a contract?
Well, I'm going to throw a caveat to it. If it's a counseling session, where we sit down and you want to tell me why something's not working or how much things sucks, I'll get blind punch all day long. But if it's a counseling session where we try to understand how we can get better together and how we can move forward, I'll sit there all day. That was my point.
Yeah, I'm not talking about a coaching and growth session. I'm talking about the bitch session that we know all shows up in our
I'll take the punch all day long.
Excellent.
Yeah, and he was in New York when I was there. He's mean. Like, he punches hard. And I'll take it. It's like fingers on a chalkboard. I don't understand it. Like, it's and I got to tell you, I parent the same way. Like, my son came home senior year with a D- in biology. First of all, I didn't even know he was taking biology. I'm like, why did you do this to yourself? Like, what? It's not you're going to be a doctor. Like, what are you doing? And
defining reality again.
And I said, and then he started giving me reason that it was. I said, dude, it doesn't really matter. This is where we are. So how about you tell me, or how about we figure out how we get to, I don't know, maybe a C+ by the time this semester ends, but we got to get ourselves out of this. But it's the same concept. Like, there's no need to spend a whole lot of time. Doesn't mean you can't learn in just a little bit, but I feel like, generally speaking, people want to spend a ton of time as to why something didn't work. And I just rather admit, hey, it didn't work. We got to figure it out and move forward.
The unfortunate thing that we're in different times. The generationally speaking, drive speaking, expectationally is different. Like, it's just kind of where we are, right? I joke about what you just said with my own son, who's graduating high school this year and has a D- in mathematics. And I'm like, why are you doing this yourself? And my joke to him is, you better find a good juniors program, right? Because, college might not be fit the bill for you, buddy.
That's right.
But listen, David, I really appreciate you joining us today. This was a lot of fun. There's a lot here. I
enjoy it. This is great.
We literally have another half-hour session about really diving down into the dynamics of what the proper teammates in a business organization looks like. Maybe that's a topic for another day.
Sure. I'd love to. This is an honor. I appreciate you guys. Joe, you're the man, brother.
Appreciate you guys. So everybody.
Joe, send us home.
Well, everybody, thank you for turning into this week's episode of Entrepreneurial Impact. Give us a follow. Give us a listen on a regular basis. These things get dropped on Wednesdays. Appreciate y'all, and I'll see you later, guys.